Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Samir Das, working as a senior investment analyst in GrowthSet. Hereby, I welcome you all to our next session, which is post-COVID-19 vaccination startup growth and challenges. And our panelist for this session will be Mr. Vikram Pandya, Director of FinTech at SP Jain School of Global Management, where he has designed Asia's first interactive classroom-led FinTech program featuring blockchain, API banking, AI, and IoT labs. He has authored several white papers and articles on FinTech domain. He has an extensive experience in banking, financial services, FinTech, consultancy, and training domain. He is also heading research arm of FinTech VC fund Varanium. He has been a successful banker for more than a decade. Also, he is FinTech ambassador of Maharashtra government's Uday FinTech platform. Next, we have Mr. Arvind Modi. He is an investment professional with experience in angel investment, venture capitalist. He is currently working as a general partner with Satguru Catalyzer, handling private equity, venture capital investment across sectors and stage. He is also responsible for deal sourcing, assisting investee companies and divestment. And other we have Mr. Harpreet Singh Sethi, founder and COO of Tech2 Global Web Solutions. He is an IT professional having 14 plus years of experience in onshore, offshore outsourcing. Worked mainly on software, mobile development, and BPO sector, having expertise in domain like human resources, finance, e-commerce, medical, and many more. So without any further delay, I would like to hand over to Mr. Harpreet Singh Sethi, who will be moderating this session. So Harpreet, over to you.
Thank you, Samir, for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. I'm Harpreet Singh Sethi, CEO of Tech2 Global Web Solutions. First of all, I would like to thank GrowthSet team for the opportunity to speak on this topic, which is quite an important one and related to post-COVID effects on startups. This is popular one these days, maybe for last 1.5 years. And first of all, I would like to speak about ourselves for a very short time. So we at Tech2 Globe help other startups to digitize and scale their businesses as we work closely with startups. So this topic is very related to us, and we know exactly the pain of the startups, what challenges they face and what kind of issues they are having currently. So I would like to start with, as we all know, the deadly virus is no longer a buzz or a new topic to discuss. COVID-19 needs no explanation, and its long-lasting effects have been imprinted in our lives. The case is similar when we talk about the business economy. It has been through several highs and lows. Although we live in a fast-paced, technology-driven world, we were still not up to the mark while confronting these challenges, as these were very new to all of us, and we never thought that everyone will be working from home. So this is pretty new. The 6 inches distance among people created a larger gap between businesses and their consumers. More than 100,000 businesses were temporarily closed, and around 98,000 businesses were permanently closed globally, which is a huge number, and like it may have hit a lot to the businesses. Though many startups were born during this period, many failed to adapt to these changes and sustain in the market. It is to mention that retail companies involved in handling food necessities, including supermarkets, convenience stores, and medical stores, were in good condition due to the government's request to continue the essential businesses. On the other hand, non-essential items such as luxury goods, apparel, home appliances, and furnishing faced a sharp decline, and retailers handling these goods were out of businesses. Retailers, construction, real estate firms experienced a drop down by 89% globally in 2020. While a part of the global economy has started again after the post-COVID vaccination period, many small and medium businesses still struggle with the need of economic aid. There are significant impacts that are seen on B2B e-commerce sales and operations. Around 58% of e-commerce businesses engaged in selling goods and services on e-commerce online platforms have experienced a half reduction in their total sales. This was a result of precautions taken during the lockdown, including limited goods transportation and restrictions to the movement of people. Moreover, around 50% contemplated that their limited operations and logistic operations resulted from restrictions to movement. We have been introduced to the new normal with masks on our faces and sanitizer is in our hands. So, with our businesses, we have experienced fluctuations during COVID and then several reopening cycles, which are one of the main reasons for introducing the new normal in the business ecosystem. It has been estimated that roughly 88% of consumers choose online shopping platform to place their orders between March 2020 and December 2020, which is quite huge. Consumers have digitized their lifestyle and increased their engagement in online shopping. Social platforms use internet browsing, teleconferencing, along with streaming of videos and movies. This resulted in hikes in B2C sales and a boost in B2B e-commerce. Businesses have turned their faces towards digital transformation, which has resulted as a fruitful step during the crisis as more and more consumers opt for online platforms for all their needs. It has helped businesses increase their visibility through online stores, blogs, social platforms, and corporate websites. Additionally, digitization creates a bridge for ORM strategy via local SEO, influencer media marketing, and mobile marketing. E-commerce platforms have been in great demand since consumers were not accessible for offline shopping methods. Most of the small and newborn businesses have taken the shelter of e-commerce platforms such as Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, Nykaa, Big Basket, Grofers, and many more to build their brand and continue their operations. These companies have helped many startups or many small businesses to sustain in this COVID time. Small to medium enterprises are facing a significant impact due to the digital transformation in the situation. These enterprises are offered a great opportunity to participate in the market ecosystem. These SMEs can expand quickly compared to offline businesses regarding increased revenue, efficiency in operations, and enhanced customer experience. The IT sector has flourished in this period. It has, grown to large, huge extent. Many companies have seen the growth of 200% plus. Even companies like us, those are, helping e-commerce companies or startups or businesses, has significant growth in last 1.5 years. There has been a significant rise in homegrown labels into market as their demand grows. Artisanal handicrafts, handlooms, vintage clothing, baking, and other businesses gained prominence online. Those people who never wanted to go online, they used to say that we don't have time to go online. We don't want to start online business. We are already occupied with our offline stuff. Now they have, switched to online platforms. They want to create their own on websites, mobile apps, post-COVID vaccination. Now people are not that much scared as they used to be, but fear is there, but not as compared to previous times. So now they are switching to online model. AI has played a significant role in this setting. People have become more reliable on different applications and software to carry out every aspect of their lives, ranging from work to socializing. Everything and everyone is now online. Industries in every realm are focused on their online presence and services, including Zomato, Netmeds, Udemy, Kisan Suvidha, Instagram, Zoom, on we are talking PhonePe, Paytm, and many more. They have grabbed significant growth in this period. Mainly all the grocery companies like Grofers, Big Basket, Amazon, they are getting a lot of orders online for the grocery. We never thought that people will order food or maybe milk online, but now everyone is doing that. Logistics companies have got good growth during this pandemic, as every business needs a rider to deliver their stuff. Companies like Porter came into the picture, like Swiggy opened their another channel like Swiggy Genie, and many more like that. They have got huge growth in this period, and I must say that future is, I mean, very. It's every business will go online, and they should go online to just sustain in the market, because we never know what's gonna come tomorrow. These COVID waves can come anytime, and I think we should plan upfront for all the unforeseen situations. And these were my points, my 2 cents on this. And I would like to ask few questions to our investors today. Uh, Samir, shall I go ahead?
Yes, yes, okay.
Okay, so my first question is, what could be the future of startups? What kind of ideas may get successful in next couple of years? That the trend has been changed in last few years, that post COVID time, like things have been changed drastically. So what do you think, that what kind of ideas may get successful in next couple of years?
Is this question to me or other?
Yeah, Vikram, you can answer.
Okay, okay. So thanks for having me here. And when we look at from the perspective of startup ecosystem itself, we need to understand before we even identify which startups will survive or not, we need to understand whether they are trying to solve some problem, which is a real problem. Do you have a problem which is good enough to solve or big enough to solve? And along with that, we need to look at the changing dynamics in the market. So because of COVID, what has happened, service which can be delivered or offered online and something which consumer can consume online has increased. And because of that, most of these startups which are getting good funding are from that segment, whether it is edutech or whether it is some of these e-commerce stores that you are able to see, or any such segment which are completely able to deliver online. Now, another thing which you have seen is that now earlier, the entire supply chain reliance that you had, that is changing. The way supply chain is earlier considered is now very different because COVID had its own impact on supply chain. You have this bullwhip effect that you normally talk about. And because of that, the entire supply chain mechanism is now undergoing change, where people are more thinking about, okay, will I require GIT only, or can I do some for hand planning and create something which is suitable for margin of safety kind of a requirement. And that is where I think even the manufacturing setup or any other startup is becoming part of the entire value chain end to end with more redundancy. So now you have supply chain with more redundancy. So those startups which are in those areas are also getting more traction. And another new trend which has started is direct to customer, as we know. So direct to customer businesses are gaining more popularity and traction. So while I mainly come from fintech, if I talk on fintech area itself, you can see that various embedded finance journey, and embedded finance is where you are coming to customer rather than customer coming to you via APIs, right? So wherever and whenever you are offering services where customer journey is frictionless, seamless, at that point in time, you are able to even sell more. You are able to do B2B2C distributions, and business to developer connections that you are able to do is changing the way you are able to scale up. Your cost of acquisition goes down. There are certain businesses today in fintech which are negative CAC, and that is again changing, right? So you have pay nearby kind of a model, or you have model where you are not paying to onboard the customer. Customer, in fact, is paying to you to get onboarded. There are certain scenarios like that. And those are also getting more popular because of this. And overall, when you look at the efficiency part, we need to think about certain trend, what is hype and what is the reality. So while earlier investor money used to get spent over offers and buying customer loyalty, that is the fact today that customer loyalty is not going to be there with you forever. So you need to think about how can I create value? How can I create positive unit economics and then sustain and survive rather than just burn money, have very short-term view. That is not going to help anymore. So you need to think logically, at least survival, number one, and second, how to then sustain and grow further. And that is something which most of these businesses have learned by going through this journey. So it is a baptism by fire by most of these scenario if you consider. And there are few startups which have very well survived, not only survived but thrived. And then there are startups which were having very small runway to start with, and they were actually finding it difficult to sustain and survive. So that is my thought process. Over to you.
As you said that, people, startups, many startups do burn funding. So my question here is, like, we have seen that startups just start their businesses to get funding and burn the money of investors and then go in a sleep mode. So what investors plan to avoid such situations, as this is impacting the real entrepreneurs who actually wish to establish something big with their consistent efforts and for a long-term vision.
Correct. So when you look at why any startup failed, right? So you need to look at those major reasons. Number one is that you don't have right kind of a product market fit. You are not able to identify where your product actually fits. So that is one reason, one of the top reasons. Then you are not having the right team which is able to deliver that product. And you just started because thinking, okay, I can do that. But it doesn't work that way. Even if you have one person who is very good, you require team work to happen, and then only you can survive. So that is another part. Third is about finding right customer, and onboarding right customer during that phase. So how to onboard that customer, how to connect with the customer, corporate, etc. Because whether you are talking about B2B or B2C, you need to have connects, right? And how to get it done. So in initial phase, even B2C may want to go for B2B2C. And that is where people may need to think. So all these are the reasons where startups may fail. So what typically one investor may need to do? Investor will need to think about ecosystem play. How can I think about investing as an ecosystem rather than standalone investment? You need to find synergies. You need to find ways and means in which you can open the right door. Even if you don't invest, that is fine. Can you open the right door for the startup and ask them to then knock on that, and whether they are able to enter? That is the test that you can take even before investing. If they are able to sustain that and survive that, they are successful in that, great. You know that it is going to then work for that business. Another thing is that you need to know about the founders themselves. What is the team dynamics, how they are thinking about team rather than money, or let's say just customer, work culture, etc. Those things are very critical. So some of these founders, startup founders, unfortunately don't know about importance of ESOP pool. So they want to just keep money with them. But no, ESOP pool is equally critical. And we as an investor, we tell them to specifically keep that ESOP pool around 15% to make sure that you are able to grow, because talent will come at a cost, and you need to also sustain and make sure that that talent which is coming is going to be with you for a long time. So that is where, again, one thing which should be considered. And another point that you need to make is that how can you connect to the right network and right people? So we do work with some of the ecosystem players. I myself have created Association for Emerging Technologies as an ecosystem. Then FinTech Yatra, I am part of that also, which is done by Abhishan Pant. So we work with ecosystem, we create ecosystem also. And then once you are part of that, there are more chances. There is no guarantee that it will survive, but there are more chances that it will survive than fail, because you have more synergy that you can bring than the risk that you are trying to take. So those things you need to consider. And startup business is always risky business. People should know about it, and we appreciate that fact. But at the same point in time, how can you structure that risk is all the more critical today.
So as far as I know that, leadership profiles are very important, and they play a significant role for the investors to decide whether they go for a funding or not. So do you think, leadership, a founder's profile and leadership past experiences does matter?
Okay, so they do give you higher valuation when you are a successful entrepreneur with good exit. There is no two way about it. But at the same point in time, specifically, we look at startups where you have right team for that right problem statement that they are trying to solve, rather than the credential. Because you may have person with great credential. Why do you think I don't have my startup? I can create it. But the issue is that you require a right set of team and skill set to deliver certain things. So thinking about startup is one thing. You can create also tech part. Tech part is also easy in a way now. You can either have your own tech team or you can outsource. The idea plus tech execution, etc., that entire journey is very long. And believe me, when you think about any founder, whether they have execution experience in the past, but is it in the similar domain? That's what you need to look at. And whether the team today that person has is good enough and capable of delivering it. So whenever you are planning to invest into startup, you will meet their team members, at least key managerial people, and you will try to identify whether they are having the right fit in the right role. And another thing which is very critical, and I'm sure you are going to appreciate this, wherever you are having any startup founder who is starting it just because he is passionate about it, that is one thing. But somebody who is passionate, not only passionate, but also making sure that from the beginning, they have figured out the business model. It is not like you will make money at some point in time, but you know how you will do that entire monetization. That should be very clear, because today most of the people start, okay, I will get customer first and then I will monetize. I believe in today's market, that will be very difficult to prove in some of the models. Of course, if you are a successful entrepreneur, you may be able to do it, let's say 1 out of 10 times, but remaining 9 times you will fail.
Absolutely. So plan and process should be very clear.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I would like to hear about from Arvind and Sahil also. Arvind, if you can just put some focus from your point of view.
Yeah, sure. So, no, basically, see, I would say post-COVID scenario, if you look at, right, I mean, the startup has like is among top 2-3 countries which is doing at 9 to 10%. Now, what I believe right now is whatever we are seeing in startup world is only tip of an iceberg. There's a lot to see. I mean, lot many unicorns to see, lot many good businesses to come. Now, compared to, I mean, if we compare pre and post-COVID business models, or let's say funding scenario. So pre-COVID, like 2020, even 2019, only like $8 to $10 billion got invested, okay, into all the startups. The number of deals were like 700, 800 deals. That used to happen like last 2-3 years. If you go 4-5 years back, it was only $2-3 billion of investment. Now, my point is, this year, 2021 has seen like $10 billion of investment in just 6 months. And the good part is, most of this investment have been into unique companies, I mean, which are new companies, new startups. So more than 500 startups have been funded in this initial 6 months. So COVID effect clearly has gone. I mean, to the question which Harpreet asked regarding what kind of business models are working now. So clearly, I mean, as you all know, I mean, earlier all these, I mean, you take any, right? I mean, retail, hospital for an OPD, okay. People used to go to gym, okay. Now, all these things, I mean, those initial 6 months of lockdown, that compelled all the startups to change their business models, okay. Now you have everything at your fingertip. Everything is online, be it education, healthcare, or even fitness. You don't need to go to gym today. I mean, you will require to go to gym. You can't replace it. But my point is, yeah, to a certain extent, a lot of things you can do at home. Okay. So business models have been changing. One more thing, I mean, I would like to say, see, I'm investing into startups for last 14-15 years. Okay. All kind of startups. But when you invest into a startup, you start with a certain business plan. Almost in every case, or maybe 70-80% of the cases, that business plan may not work. I mean, whatever Excel sheet or business plan you have seen it will not work. So business plan, business models have to evolve with time. I mean, if you don't evolve, if you don't change yourself, see, technology is changing every 2-3 years, everything getting changed, right? Earlier, people were investing into B2C. Now the flavor is B2B, right? So people are going more for B2B, enterprise technology and all that. So you have to keep evolving your business models. So I think wherever we have made money, the startup which have been successful have been essentially where the team is flexible to change their mindset. If you are too much in love with your business plan or your idea and you are rigid to change yourself or your business plan, I think that's where if things doesn't go good, I mean, it's not like COVID or something comes up, I mean, it start going south. So yeah. I would say, yeah, interesting. I mean, fields. I mean, coming up after post-COVID, I would say robotics is one of. I mean, since because all the online channel is like increasing, right? So use of robotics is also increasing in everything. I mean, be it logistics, right? Logistics is getting increased. I mean, a lot of kitchens are now using robots. I mean, there's a lot of R&D going on in robotics kitchen. Okay. So in food, in logistics, in delivery, whatever technology or robotics you can use, that is going to be a very, very big field. Ag tech is going to be big, right? We are an agri-based economy, okay? Still 26-30% of people involved into agriculture. So agri-tech is going to be very, very big. Look at Next, look at Udan, NinjaCart. All these have become unicorns in like maybe 3-4 years. I mean, after they starting. So one thing is, I mean, innovative business models and change in business plan. I think these are the two key things I would say. To startup to, not to fail. Just to give a data, globally 90% of startups fail, and 10% fail in first year, and 90% fail forever. So that's the global data. So you have to be in top 10%.
Right. I have one more question. As we see that the fear is not the same as we used to have. People are now more flexible, and but fear is still there. So do you think that investors are still skeptical to invest in new startups, or they are flexible, or they are looking for the businesses to invest? And how should startup prepare their pitch for the investors, considering that potential COVID waves in future, or may COVID can come again or whatever? So do you think that investors are now flexible and looking for the new businesses? Mr. Arvind.
Yeah, Sahil also we can.
Sure.
Is there? Yeah. Arvind, you can go on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So no, I would say, investors are looking at new business models. Everyone was skeptical last year. Even, unfortunately, did not do a single deal in 2020. When we spoke to those companies in April and May, those companies were not even existing. So that was the scenario in 2020. So frankly, we did not invest in 2020. 2021, we have made 2 investments. So we are a PE fund. We look at a bigger size deal. Deals may take time, but we have done 2 investments in last 6 months, which is, I think, a decent number considering our fund size and our mandate. So talking about industry in general, I would say 2021, lot of funds. You name anything. Lot of the good thing is there's a lot of push from government side. Okay, so new funds have come up. So I remember in 2013-14, there used to be only 400 active investors. Registered investors, not even active. If you go to SEBI site 2014-15, there were only 400 registered funds. Out of that, a lot of funds might not have done first close itself. Okay, so only 200-250 were investing. This includes all, angel fund, PE fund, VC fund. Today you have 1,000 investors. Okay, in span of 6 years, 6 to 7 years, you have 1,000 active investors. If you go to registered investors, it is much more than that. But 1,000 are active. Now, my point is all these 1,000 include lots of family offices. See, if you go back 4 to 5 years, family offices investment was negligible. Okay. Now today, family office has come in a big way to support startups. And we being a part of the ecosystem, we are very happy because every startup needs different kind of money, right? People starting up directly from college or after 3-4 years of job, they don't have too much money to bootstrap. They will need some kind of angel funding or some kind of family offices funding. So up to 4-5 crore rupees, or let's say $1 million, $1.5 million, they get funding from angel fund than family offices, which was not there earlier. Okay. This is happening also because other assets are not performing. Now, if there's a family office, they're being one of the most promising return by, they're getting the best return in startups. That's why every city will find every metro will have 40-50 family offices investing directly into startups. So in that way, I would say startup has grown, number of investors have grown, startup business models have also evolved. And I believe this trend is going to increase a lot. I would say 2023-24, you would see at least 2,000 active investors. See, likes of 100 VX, venture capital, all these guys are doing such a wonderful job, right? They are investing 30, 40, 50 startups in a year. Difficult to manage, difficult to invest. These guys are doing wonderful jobs. So my point is, all these guys are new. Even we talk a lot about charters, but even investors are evolving, right? Earlier investors, we used to do 3-4 investments in a year, we used to party. But now investors are making 40-50 investments and they are willing to take risks. Okay. Now, even out of the 50 investment in a year, 10 are going bust, they are okay, they are fine with that. Even 20 are going bust, they are fine with that. But at least those remaining 30 startups, they are going to a next level, budgeting to a next level where VC and PE funds are a lot in market and they are investing into them. Business model wise, I would say, the startups which a pure play cash burn kind of a model, which Vikram also pointed out that, some startups which are pure play burning cash or a Me Too kind of a startup, they will find themselves difficult to raise funds. See, there has to be some innovation like this. Look at Misho. Okay. So Misho, they have innovation business model, right? Immediately like last 3-4 years, they have done great. Lots of fintech are there, but look at Cred. Okay. That is hardly a 2-year-old startup. It's a unicorn now. So there has to be unique offering. You cannot be a Me Too offerer, and your business model, as Vikram rightly pointed out, unit economics has to work out. At a gross profit level, if you lose money, nobody is going to fund you. So I think these 2-3 things are very important. Innovate and make money at least at gross level.
Mr. Vikram Pandey, can you just suggest our people who seek funding? So what could be the right pitch, and what would you suggest so that they can prepare a right pitch, and which investors look for?
Okay, so in fact, there is no correct answer here, exactly a predefined answer. But when you look at the right approach, because there can be right approach about creating the pitch. So number one thing you need to identify, if you go flow wise, you need to think about what is that you are trying to solve. You should be very clear about. You should not say, I'm trying to do this, that, everything. No, you should be very clear about what is that you are trying to do. And that clarity should be there from that first slide that you are trying to present. And it should be captivating so that, believe me, we look at more than 50 startups a week. And after that, that another startup which comes, if you are not able to put some effort in showing why you are pitching, then it is just going to fizzle out. So you need to make sure that even investor is excited about what you are trying to do. So that is one thing I will first put, that you need to identify what you are trying to do correctly, and you should be also passionate about it. So when you are bringing that energy into what you are saying, then even the opposite party is interested into what you are trying to do. That's number one. Second thing, whenever you are trying to explain why you are trying to solve this problem, again, you should be very clear which target market you are trying to approach, how you are going to address that specific obtainable market. That plan should be very clear step by step. If you are not clear, okay, you will think that I will spray and pray. It will not work out. So you need to have a proper strategy around it. And that is where I would like to understand whether the startup has done their homework, whether they have done some research, primary or secondary, doesn't matter. Once you have done that, then you come to why you are the right team to solve this problem, right, in a way. So you may want to bring that picture and then how you are trying to solve it uniquely, what are your USPs and moat that you are bringing. That should be very clear. Otherwise, what will happen, you will say that, okay, I'm trying to do this. I'm also one of the players. Today, one of the players is okay, you can do that, but then you will not become a unicorn at all. You need to make sure why you are going to become a unicorn. And that is the passion and conviction that we want from users who are bringing and pitching. Now, another last point that I would like to bring is you need to look at competitive landscape in a holistic manner. Today, you need to think about not only immediate competitor, but also some other competitors who can easily come. Because today, as you know, you have cross-industry integrations everywhere, and some big player, large player can easily come. You need to evaluate certain risks, how you are addressing those risks. If you have thought through that, we give even brownie points for that, because you know about the risk that you are dealing with, but how you are trying to mitigate those risks, then it is great. And you should be very clear about your fund asking or ask that you have, how you are going to utilize that fund over the period of, let's say, half year, 1 year, whatever is that plan, but you should be clear about it. You should not say, I may want to go for marketing. Okay, what is that percentage or amount? You say 80% marketing. Why? You should be able to justify all the numbers. While we don't want your entire model on the first day, we do want to understand the rationale behind each and every number. And that is one thing you should be very clear. And final point, which is again required, is what is that you are thinking about when you are trying to grow your business from, you have 5-year plans given by every startup. But unfortunately, those are numbers. And numbers does not mean anything unless and until you have concrete action plan to achieve that number. I can put any number to justify any valuation I want, but that mathematical magic is not what we want. We want to have that conviction about how you are going to reach that action plan to justify that. So this is all in a nutshell. You need to do it. How you do it, it depends on you, your approach, but the approach should be correct.
Thank you. So action plan should be very precise, and it should show that how can we, if we get the problem in future, and how can we fix those problems in no time.
Correct.
Mr. Arvind, would you like to add on something here?
Yeah, no, so I would say, see, before pitching to any investors, right, unless they make money, I mean, you have to convince your investors that you will make money in that 4 or 5 years. Unfortunately, see, all the businesses, startups, I mean, they can wait for 10 years, right? I mean, you are young, very young. I mean, you are in early 20s. You have 10, 15 years to make money. Investors are very impatient. Okay. Because the structure is like that, we have to return our money to our investors within 4 or 5 years after investment. Now, all the investors will push you to make money in 4 to 5 years. I mean, that's where there's always a disconnect. So you have to, your business plan in action should show that you can make money in 4 to 5 years. If you're able to convince that, I think, half the job is done. How do you want to convince it? See, the addressable market has to be big. You are working into a niche market, then there are niche funds you have to approach. Let's say, for example, there's a fund for agri, okay? Agri is a niche market. I mean, the kind of growth you see in agri is different, like a kind of growth you see in an e-commerce company, okay? So for those, you have a different kind of investors, okay? But if you have a big market and there's a pain point which you are trying to address, okay? And you have the right kind of team. The team is very important. I think these 3 or 4 things, if you have in place, and I think before you approach a VC, I mean, we already have gone through a couple of rounds of funding. As I said, I mean, all these government institutions, all these small family offices, they might have funded you, let's say, a couple of crore rupees before going to a VC. If you are able to demonstrate that that investment has grown to a certain level in terms of whatever benchmarks you have in a startup, I mean, be it in terms of number of users, or be it in terms of number of whatever revenue, whatever benchmark you have set, if that is showing a good growth, a sustainable growth, I think it's easier to get money after that. The business plans and all, I mean, Excel sheet, presentations, I mean, nobody cares too much about. What people care more is like which area you are working, how you can basically capture that market, and what's your abilities. That's more important. Even one more thing, I mean, earlier, what trend, I mean, I used to see earlier is like, if you are from Ivy League, I mean, you certainly get a hearing from all the VC investors. I mean, now the trend is changing. I mean, education-wise, of course, that matters, but yeah, more than education, what you have done, your ability, I mean, that matters more now.
Thank you so much for your insights, sir. Over to you, Sameer.
Thank you, Harpreet. We have Mr. Shahu also. Shahu, you can also ask a few questions if you have.
So specifically, if you are looking to the startup sector, education and this healthcare sector is emerged after this COVID-19. So Vikram, I would like to know about this education sector, as you are already working with this Uday platform and all these things. So I would like more insight on this education sector.
Okay, sure. So when you look at edutech as a sector, you have multiple different even parallel pipes which are connecting into this, like edu fintech as we call it. Right? So you have people providing EMI for someone to do some professional program and school fee payment structuring. So all those things are now gaining traction. One thing you need to remember, however, because of this China thing, which happened, right? You know about that. Because of that, some of the startups are now fizzling out from the valuation perspective. But overall, this sector is still warm, not hot anymore. Now let's understand from the perspective of different models which this edutech firms are having. All the emerging technologies, like you have API, blockchain, AI, ML, big data, IoT, AR, VR, all these different technologies they are utilizing in order to make education more friendly to the consumer or customer and attractive, because end of the day, who is your target customer? Frankly, people will say student, but unfortunately it's not, it is parents. And when you are talking about parents as a target market, you want to pitch that your son or daughter will be someone great, right? And that is where they are putting money. But ultimately, which is working out, let's say great, is more people are knowing that, okay, you can do learning digitally. That is one change, which is a great change, to be frank, right? Because people earlier used to just understand that, okay, I need to physically visit and learn. And it has its own advantage, believe me, because I also deliver sessions. So physical has its own advantage, but by changing the channel or the way you are learning, there are certain advantages there as well. And the way you can deliver that session, you can do the flipped classroom model, all those things are having that advantage. I mean, new startups are getting built around these new advantages. So how can I create a startup, or let's say a use case where I can deliver AI-based benchmarking to the student? There are a few startups which are getting funded over there. Then you have, how can I allow students to understand the concept better by doing the competitive summary of that and competitive benchmark? That is another startup which got funded. Then you have startups where you are trying to identify, how can I make the students ready for job interview, for making sure that, okay, how can I get certain things ready from right from the mouth of someone who has given that interview earlier. So those are the startups which are getting funded again. So expert-owned kind of startups are there, which are doing well. Then you have startups which are working closely with education institutions, where they are trying to identify that, can I build bots for you? Can I build bots where I can allow you to ask questions and give you that 24/7 experience of having a tutor with you? Yes, then those things are getting funded. And finally, earlier, even the physical booklet that you used to get or books that you used to get, that experience is getting changed. And in ebook format, you are getting, let's say, that Kindle or whatever you are using, and everything is now getting changed from physical to digital. And those things are getting accepted by the parents and student as well, and which is the bigger change I've seen. So change in behavior as well as change in use of technology. So right from, let's say, even if when you think about BMC schools, they have also moved to Zoom and other platforms, so Google Meet. So when you think about those kind of a scenario, earlier nobody could have thought that BMC students can also go. Of course, there are challenges. Their parents may not have mobile phone with them. So those are the challenges that we are still dealing with. But at the same point in time, majority of the people are now understanding that, yes, learning can happen online. So with challenges and benefits, you have such business models which are getting funded.
Okay. So after this COVID-19, there are different businesses and business models are emerged, and they are somehow just because of this situation. So Arvind, I would like to know from you how you evaluate such type of businesses or startup which are having question about their sustainability. If there are some businesses who just emerged because of this COVID-19. So after the things goes normal, there might be possibility that business or business model may not work. So would you like to add some focus on this?
That's a good question, Sahu. So I would say that, during COVID, a lot of new models evolved. Okay.
Yeah.
Health tech, I mean, that got a lot of push. I mean, earlier health tech was more into record keeping, online record keeping and all that, but it has evolved now into telemedicine was there, but now telemedicine has got a lot of focus. Okay. Telemedicine, teleconsulting, all kind of diagnostics. I mean, you sit at home, you get diagnostic, care at home. I mean, that's a very big segment. All these things were present earlier. Okay. A lot of companies are there. But after, I think, COVID, people have realized, consumers have realized that all these services can be utilized, and there are good services, good companies which are offering decent services. Okay. Now, we had Practo earlier also, right? But if you see Practo's number of users now, after 1 year, you would see a significant jump. Okay. Care at home companies, they are doing good now. Now, what happens earlier nobody had idea. I mean, people used to go to a doctor if they have something, if they want to visit, they want to visit personally. Okay. Even on a phone call and all that, they were not, I mean, it's a user experience, right? Initially in 2020, 12, 13, people did not used to buy from e-commerce. They wanted to have look and feel and touch. Now the same thing is coming into healthcare. Okay. Now people have seen that. Now I don't think whatever new companies have come up in healthcare, they are going to sustain. Okay. One example is a lot of companies, they were doing good things in mental health earlier. Now mental health has got a big push during the time of COVID. So all these mental health companies, they do a lot of programs customized to all their individuals, which help all these patients a lot. Okay. Now mental health is a very, very big, I mean, it's a big market, I would say. A lot of people are struggling with some kind of an issue which people don't even know, or people don't know whom to talk to. That's a niche market, but because of COVID, all these things have come up so well. I would say that this is not going to die so easily. I mean, particularly all these advances into healthcare. So I would say, yeah, these things are going to stay even after COVID. And this, at least for health tech segment, it has done wonders. I mean, look at PharmEasy, right? I mean, it became unicorn only after COVID-19. PharmEasy is there for 6-7 years. And they're doing good job. It became unicorn after COVID-19. And people are realizing, so even if you go to a tier 3, tier 4 city, you get PharmEasy, I mean, medicine delivered. Maybe they will take a day or two, but at least you get it delivered. So remotely also you can handle, just look at, I mean, kids are working in Mumbai and parents staying somewhere else, retired parents. So still from remotely, you can get very best consulting for your parents. You can get medicines, you can get diagnostics, which was not possible earlier. So I think, yeah, these are going to stay. And just like online education, this is going to stay. I mean, now people have realized. Also, like after COVID, I would say a lot of real estate management has got a push. Okay, people have shifted to their native places. Okay, let's say example, I am living in Bombay. I have my own flat, but I have my native place. I have got my native place. Okay, my flat is empty. I want to rent it out. There were companies earlier where you can go and list. Okay, there are 5, 6, 7 companies where you can go and list. You can provide photographs and all that. But what you need right now is a more effective process where you can actually go and rent it out. You get a security that, okay, whomever I'm renting is perfectly, I mean, the tenant is perfectly fine. So all the services have not come up. There are few companies who are working into this model. So I would say, yeah, real estate, tech space is going to be one of the segments where it will get a boost, a lot of boost. Last 1 year, I mean, after COVID, a lot of women entrepreneurs also got funded. I mean, the proportion of entrepreneurs getting funding is also increasing after post-COVID scenario. So I would say even that is going to stay for a while. So yeah, I mean, mostly, I mean, whatever changes, I mean, people have adopted in business models, that will stay. That's fashionable.
Just to add to what he said, absolutely correct. So as I mentioned earlier, wherever you have behavioral change, right, those things are going to stay. Some of the items, for example, which is like one-time thing, those things may not stay. But wherever you are able to bring that mindset change, those things are going to survive.
Sir, I have a question from you, Mr. Vikram. So since you are from education sector, so, trend has been changed. Now physical classes are coming back and, schools have been started. And do you think that the companies like Byju's, Udemy, like they will be able to survive for long term? Because now once children will start going to school and they won't get a lot of time to just have other online classes, and parents would be more interested to send their kids to the sports or maybe physical activities or something that they used to be. So do you think these companies will be able to survive for long term?
There are two parts to this answer. Number one, first of all, most of these are complementing rather than replacing most of the stuff. So to the extent they're complementing, still that thing may stay. But when you think about usage wise, right, how much time can you devote? Can you really do certain things? So that is where do it at your own pace, etc. helps. So those companies which are in that area will still do well. But along with that, I do agree that people will have lesser time once everything starts. But at the same point in time, you are looking at the complete new segment also, where I have seen so many people are going for homeschooling also nowadays, right? So you will find a new segment sometimes which nobody could have thought about. So that can happen. So I'm not saying that everything will remain the same. It will definitely go down from usage perspective, but you may never know that some hidden segment that you were not able to capture may come out suddenly. And because of that, homeschooling may get more popular. You have homeschooling as a service model sometimes evolving very soon, because you have all the elements or building blocks which are ready. You just need to bring them together, and then you can get it. You can have, with government focusing on this new education policy, you may find even completely virtual schools coming up. And it is happening, as we know. So those things may happen, and you may require this entire value chain to support that. So I do believe that some of these things might get fizzled out, while some of these things will stay. And you may need to find a different niche, as Arvind mentioned earlier.
Maybe that will depend on the age of the child. Like elder kids are more prone, they are more familiar with online classes, and they are okay, they can manage themselves. But being a father of two kids, those are very small. Like
I agree.
My dad,
So
daughter
let
never
me
went
tell
to
you one
school.
thing. Nobody knew that, okay, so sometimes you create demand rather than demand being there, right? So nobody realized that, okay, you may want to send your kids for learning coding at White Junior. So that is kind of a scenario where you will create demand and push someone. But I don't know how long it will survive. But I'm simply saying that you have people making money out of it, and they are able to survive. Yes, they are able to survive.
They have created some competitive environment among parents. Actually, if my kid is not
so I personally don't believe in pushing someone where they don't want to go. But I'm simply saying, discover your own passion, do whatever you want. But some people are able to create this kind of a scenario. So good for them.
So basically, those edutech startup will survive. This educate startup are working parallel with the present education system. They are not replacing the education system present, because of course for that they will require to follow government rules and regulation, all these things. So of course, as you mentioned, the time constraint will be there. Now students, kids are at home and they can attend lots of classes. They can subscribe for Byju's again. That can go for this coding thing and all this thing. But of course, it will be a change after the regular schools will start. Okay. So Harpreet, I have a question for you. Previously the technology thing was not compulsory for everyone, and having website, having their app and all these things. But presently, as the things are changing, everyone is having, these are the normal things. I think a website and application, these are the default things. So as you are working in a technology sector, so how you will differentiate or enhance the customers at this stage? Because having application and website is normal thing now. They don't have some additional point of view. So people are now going for AI, ML and all these things. So what is your experience about this sector?
So since we are, technology companies, so I strictly believe, even not now, even not before COVID, we used to think that everybody should have an online presence, no matter what, whether they want to sell online or not, whether they want to add a payment gateway or they want to take payments online or not. But their products, their services should be visible all the time for their audience. Because let's say if I don't have, everybody would like to check Google, or maybe they'd like to check Just Dial, IndiaMart or something for any kind of stuff. If I need even a small pin, now I check online. So I firstly go and see that if I need anything, I'll go online, where can I get it? Because not I don't want to go outside, because there is huge traffic, a lot of things are going. Now people like to sit at home, and they just want to just buy something with a click of button. Or maybe if they find it online, they just book it through Porter or Swiggy Genie app. Like, let's say if I stay in Delhi, and I stay in Rohini, and I would like to order something from 40-50 kilometers away. Couple of years back, I could not expect that I could send someone from online booking and they can bring the stuff from there. But now within a click of button, even though they are not selling it online, they are not taking payments online, but I can connect with them. I can just send someone from app, to their place, to their workplace, and can get the stuff at my place within few bucks, maybe 100 or 200 rupees, which will definitely save my time as well as money, because now time is very important. It plays an important role, and at the same time I can utilize those time, that time for my something productive, for my work, or maybe for to spend my time with my family or friends, rather than just going through the traffic to buy that small stuff. So having an online presence is utmost important now, and everybody should have a, I would say, a website. If not, they should be even they are not selling anything, they should showcase their products or services for sure.
Thank you.
Just to add to what he said, let's look at the entire initiation of the transaction, right? Right from the product discovery to product understanding to identifying the alternatives, and from that to identifying how can I order that. Everything has moved online. Earlier, you used to speak to someone you trust and ask questions. Today, those things are now relying on, let's say, somebody else's review. You are trying to buy something, so that review, etc., is now replacing that expert person's review that you earlier used to take. Unboxing videos on YouTube, for example, have millions of views today, because how you are able to perceive that brand depends on that person's view. So you are having those influencers changing everything, and that entire influencer economy is also a separate topic. But when you think about that, social currency is a real currency now. When we think about how people are trying to understand a product, a service, and how they are trying to associate with that. So that is very true.
Completely agree, sir. And people now get option to buy online. They get a lot of options. Earlier, as you said, they used to just have a reference, and I would like to maybe I used to ask my brother that, can you give me a reference of that stuff where you can get, where we can get that. Now I can myself check online and I can compare the options. I can check the feedbacks. I can see what is best for me, maybe by checking a videos, as you said. And I have a lot of options to review myself rather than asking someone and trust blindly on someone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Arpit. Yeah, Vikram, so 3 years back when we were attending some fintech forums and all that time, so during that time, you and your organization were doing a very good job by creating a fintech resources. And in that time, fintech resources were not available. So yeah, so you started this Uday, and also you have started some
Association for Emerging.
Yeah, in there. So yeah, so what do you think? What is the status of Indian resources in the fintech or technology sector right now?
So fintech, fortunately, is very closely knit community, and the world is very small when it comes to fintech. Definitely, I know many people. Somewhere they have met me somehow, and then I'm meeting them again, right? So the world is very small there. But when we talk about the resources and how we are working together in most of this area, so we do understand that fintech is required for every business. It is not like that fin part is going to be independent for someone and tech is going to be independent. Today, those are embedded everywhere. So whether you are into pharma or whether you are in some manufacturing, somehow fintech will touch you as well. And that is where this AT, which I have created, or this fintech program that Maharashtra government has started. So everywhere when you think about why we are doing what we are doing is to first create awareness that you should be also knowing about this thing. There are references available where you can learn freely and understand certain things. There are references available where you can get your business to the next level by understanding how you can utilize technology effectively, efficiently. There are ways and means we can connect you to the right people, right corporate, without thinking about money. And the idea here is that if as an ecosystem we are successful, then only more people will be attracted towards this ecosystem. And then we are going to build a nation where we are not only looking for money, but we are also making sure we are creating employers, not the employees. That is very critical, because you can have n number of employees created out of educational system, but if you don't have employers, who will employ them? So these are the key points that I would like to make, why we are doing what we are doing.
Thank you, Vic. Arvind, I would, because we actually having very less time. So Arvind, I would like to know from your end. So we are having lots of participants who are the startup. So basically, to become a fundable startup, what basic thing they need to require? I mean, yeah. So with this, we will conclude our session. Yeah, please, Arvind.
Yeah. So I think key element which are important in any kind of a startup, I mean, is first of all, an idea, right? So the idea has to be very strong and sustainable idea, not a me too kind of an idea, but idea which innovation either in your product or your services or in your business model. There has to be some innovation, some thought process gone into that idea. Second thing I would say, don't go only with an idea to your VC. Execute it up to a certain level, demonstrate it that it is working, then you go to your VC. I think that is the second point. Third thing is team. I mean, your team has to be in place. You cannot, just 1 or 2%. I mean, you cannot go to a VC and ask for a funding. That may not, be exciting for a investor. So go with a proper team. Everybody may not be in the board at least, but identified people who are willing to join you. So I think third is the team. Fourth thing is your capability to achieve that market, whatever segment you are into, how you can gain that market share in that particular segment. That is strategy. If you are willing to demonstrate, you are able to demonstrate all these 4 things, I think then you are able to get funded.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for your valuable time and your insights. We are really thankful.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, so there was time constraint. So this was a really interesting session. So definitely we will connect in separate session or some time whenever we get chance. So thank you so much, Harpreet, Vikram, and Arvind. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would like to thank you all the panelists and the moderator for such an amazing session. Thank you for being with us. So as we are approaching at the end of the first day of this very special event, I would grab the opportunity to end the day with a special note. Our day started with introduction and followed by different investment insights into venture capital, private equity, corporate venture capital, startup workshop, and COVID factors. We had a great line of conversations and insight, full ideas and hints by our esteemed panelists throughout the day and in different sessions. I would like to take the opportunity to conclude the first day of our event by thanking our panelists, guests, chief guests, and attendees for being here and sharing your expertise. I would like to thank our media partner, Outlook Business, to get us covered, and thank you all my colleagues. I hope you all had a great time, and we are looking forward to the second day of the session, which will be happening tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you.